It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantatrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine. This is take 2 of the live stream for Andor episode 12. If you saw the first take, just pretend you didn't. I'm here live. Nothing goes wrong when it's live, and I'm here with Fantatrax.com's Mr. Mark Newbold and Mr. Paul Naylor. How are you guys?
Hello.
Very well. Hello.
I feel like I know you're very well. It's as Steve and reliably reminds us, it's Thanksgiving, so we should be thankful that the software allows us to kickstart and go again. Good evening, Jack. Thanks for joining us on the live stream. We're here to talk Andor episode 12, or Cyril episode 12, as I prefer to call it. It is a Cyril show. He survived season 1. He's going to be back for season 2. A year will have passed, and we may be able to get some little Cyril babies in that year.
Wouldn't that be a clutch of Cyrils?
Yeah, we could have like baby. What was his name? Uncle Holdo.
Uncle Harlow.
Harlow Jr. Overall thoughts on the episode, Mark? We'll start with you.
I absolutely loved it. It's been a brilliant season. There's been so much to sort of take away from season 1 of Andor that season 2 can't come quickly enough, but it will be a long way until we get it, probably a couple of years, I would say. A lot of plot to wrap up, or at least not to wrap up, but to move on and leave in a smart enough place that we feel satisfied. You know, we're not walking out on a complete cliffhanger. We're left with something to think about for the next however many months until the season starts. So many characters to consider, so many things to sort of fold in, but I think as a finale to season 1 and to all the plots we've had so far, I think it was fantastic.
And Paul?
I think it'll be interesting to go back and rewatch the whole 12 now that we've got them all, which I think for a lot of people that will sort out the pacing issues perhaps, because I think it's one of those shows where if you watch it as an entire thing, it will gel together better than it does as an episode here, an episode there. That, thankfully, is why we got the first 3 episodes all sent out at the same time. Otherwise, I think there would have been even more confusion. As far as episode 12 goes, love the whole funeral thing, love the somberness, and then like the jazzy effects when we get into the actual main event of Marva in holograph form, really performing at her own funeral very well. Quite a stunning sort of performance, really. I mean, if that had been in a standard drama, something of that effect, you'd be talking BAFTAs and you know, and that kind of sort of Golden Globes and stuff like that. For me, the Andor series, there was one episode early on that was a little bit of a no event, but for the most part, I think it's been an absolute class A drama. It's the best non-Star Wars thing that's ever come out, if you know what I mean. It doesn't follow the template of the galaxy far, far away. It kind of throws it away, which I know that's what they were told. Just do your own thing, and it's really worked for me. I think it's been something that I would like to think that I would have come up with, and I'm quite jealous that I didn't.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you're going to do Star Wars on TV and you're going to have multiple shows, the shows have to come at Star Wars from different angles, and I think Andor did that by doing something completely different, and it undermined everybody that kind of criticizes the fact that it's how would you describe it, that it's a political show.
Yeah.
Especially people that criticise the prequels for being too much politics. It shows you can't do it. There you go. Steve's not seen it yet. He's been so busy with work, and then the fire department, and of course holidays in America as well. So you'll maybe get a chance for the next few days celebrating the holidays to check out the finale. Yeah. But
you might want to watch this.
Yeah, lots of spoilers in the next 45 minutes or so. And we're going to get stuck into them straight away. So we kicked off the episode on Ferrex, and I didn't pick up on it straight away, but he's building a bomb, which is kind of becomes a central plot point of things kicking off during the funeral. And I don't know if you guys picked up on it, that's what he was building straight away or not.
Go on, Mark.
Yeah, I did. I sort of thought that maybe that was, when you sort of saw the tubing of it, I thought, he's not building the lightsaber, it's not that show. And then you sort of saw the components and how just careful and slow he was being with everything. So it kind of made sense. And then when I cottoned on, like Roger said, that was his dad. I think Pack was his dad's name, if I remember, the Imperial officer kind of said, I'd like to hang him on Rick's Road. And Dedra said, do what you want. So you assume that's what happened. It felt very much like that was his fate as well. So, yeah, quite an impactful opening and certainly set the tone for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, definitely.
I kind of figured that it was a bomb as well. What I hadn't realised was that this young lad, there was a significance to him being there. I thought it was just a random character that we saw putting together a bomb. It was only when I rewatched some of the earlier episodes that I picked up on the fact that he was in it. And it like you say, Mark, his dad had been taken, and whether it happened off screen or not, we don't know. But we can only assume that he's been killed or certainly tortured. And this was this kid's idea of revenge.
We then jumped across to Coruscant, and it was one of the few elements that moved away from Ferrex during the episode, and we had Mon Mothma confront her husband on a taxi journey about his gambling habits, and she was very explicit in blaming him for financial problems they may or may not have because he's been wasting money on gambling, throwing out that he should go to Canto Bight and so on. All done seemingly quite consciously within the earshot of their driver, who we all know is an ISB agent. So the theory being that she is throwing it out there so the ISB learn of her financial woes caused by her husband's gambling, thus hiding her already declared financial black hole she's created by funding terrorism, as she does. That's a kind of working theory. I think it's probably a fair one to throw out there, I think.
Yeah, it seems like the most plausible reason for the money going missing, doesn't it? Because he would be known within those circles as a bit of a, he is a bit of a fop, and he is a bit of a dandy, as people used to say. He's a bit of a party boy, likes to spend the money. But I think in this instance, he's sort of, when he protests and says, no, you've got this wrong, let's go back and sort this out, it wasn't me. That's the most real he's been in the whole season so far. So I think she is just using it as a cover because, as we move on to the episode, the whole situation with her daughter, she's letting that play out without putting up too much of a fight. So there's certain sacrifices you realise that she's probably the one that makes the most sacrifices, and you could say this might be the start of another.
Yeah. I mean, later on when the focus shifts to the daughter, where and it's a brave part of this series has been that it's shedding its thoughts and its take on arranged marriage, which is obviously what it's pointing towards with the daughter. And it also hints that many, many years ago, when Mon Mothma and her sleazy husband first met, that was an arranged marriage as well. So it's not all love in that relationship. I mean, that's been made quite clear from the off.
Someone needs to defend him. So I'm going to defend him on the fact and say he's
go for it.
Kicked his gambling habit, and unbeknownst to him, his wife's spending money on terrorism.
Yes. Yes. You can't really argue against that.
Mark Howard's asking if we knew who the hologram was on the desk. We think it was Pac, who was the character that Andor met in the first few episodes, who sort of ran the sort of the little cage kind of area and was effectively Bix's boss. And he was the one that was being tortured just prior to Bix, I think.
And he was where the radio was kept. It was his place. That's where the radio was.
Yeah. So that's who we think
where they did the Morse code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking of Ferrex, we jump back there, and everyone's kind of getting in position for the funeral. Cinta's there. She's watching what's going on, and Andor's back on the planet as well. He's getting himself in position. He's trying to get the opportunity to be at the funeral, and he quickly realizes that the planet's kind of overrun with people that would probably rather have him dead himself. And Luthien, another one, has gathered there. Strange kind of episode for Luthien. He didn't get too overly involved in too much until just at the end.
But don't you think with him being there, with him seeing it, and obviously Cassian spots him later on, but him sort of observing it, especially, I know I'm stepping ahead a bit, but especially Marva's speech, sort of post-death speech, that he must have been proud as punch to see that. So I think it was almost as much about him sort of bearing witness to what was, the powder keg was about to go off, and that's kind of what he wants. Yeah. So it was an odd one for him, because he's usually a bit more involved, isn't he?
Yeah. He was watching, always watching. And the democratically elected officials all had a meeting to ensure that the funeral went with grand organisation and precision, and everyone was able to enjoy themselves and go home safely.
That was clearly the plan.
That was clearly the plan. Paul, you're laughing as if you don't agree. Do you have concerns with the democratically elected imperial government?
I'm clearly not the political monster that you are, Brian. That went over my head.
See, just always thinking bad things of people. It's terrible. So basically, the original plan was going to be between 30 and 60 people at the funeral, and they were going to keep them to Rick's Road. Didn't go particularly well, the plans. Things were kind of thrown out of kilt. So that's Rick's Road as we head towards the big tower, which we'll remember the bell ringing from the first episode. And the Imperials at this point think they've got things organised. They're going to keep things contained and in order, and everyone's going to have a jolly time. Marva's going to get a wonderful send-off, and they can all go home peacefully. And any criminals who have escaped from prison will be duly arrested. And we also have a good citizen who was Mon Mothma's taxi driver gone to the Imperial Security Bureau to let them know about his concerns that poor Mon Mothma's money is being whittled away by her husband, and her poor role as a senator could be compromised as a result. And do you think this is going to play heavily into season 2? That Mon Mothma now seems to be in the eyes of the ISB. Granted, this has been here before because the taxi driver's been sort of planted there, but.
She's obviously under suspicion to a degree, isn't she? Because they've put somebody on her, so she's obviously causing. But she'd said it before that she wanted to be that irritant, but but do it in a calculated way so that they just think
to subvert the government is what she wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. But she's being quite overt about the way she's playing it to a degree. She's being quite open about it, but under the table, so to speak, she's still doing all these other things. So yeah, definitely in season 2. I mean, it's got to come to a point because this is kind of running alongside Rebels as well, and we know in Rebels she gets to the point where she makes the big speech and tries to pull everybody together. And of course, in Rebels, you didn't have Luthen, you had Saw, but you didn't have Luthen and other characters. But it's going to be interesting how the two run parallel. I think that's where Leland, She, and people like that come into the frame a little bit. But definitely, you're going to see more of this in season 2.
Yeah,
and potentially, I take it we'll see Rebels characters then in season 2.
There's a chance, definitely a chance. At least as a hologram.
Yeah.
I'd like to think we will.
Yeah, they like a hologram. Talking of holograms, Krieger, the rebel, has been dealt with his terrible terrorist ways. Not everyone was happy. Deidre wasn't happy with the way that the Imperials had handled it. So not all's perfect in the ISB. We know we've got one traitor in there, and Deidre's maybe ruffling a little bit feathers as well. So the potential that the storyline in the future season could be a little bit of unrest and uncertainty within the ISB, and I guess at some point they have to lose their position of power to some degree because they don't heavily feature in post-trilogy kind of storylines, I guess, when the trilogy comes along.
I mean, we see a few of that type of Imperial officer on board the first Death Star, don't we? Very, in the scene where Grand Moff Tarkin's talking and Vader chokes Motti. There's a few in there, but they're very much a background character. So it's been good to see that kind of role fleshed out. So I suppose we can assume that they do still exist in that time period as well, but they're just not mentioned for whatever reason. It's like we don't get a Death Trooper, do we?
It wasn't
but I think you do see General Yularen, don't you, earlier on in this season, and he's at the table, that Death Star table you just mentioned. Different actor, and you see him in Rebels, you saw him in Clone Wars when he was a Republic officer, but I think the ISB is still there. They are still the Secret Service to a degree, so they're operating under the radar. But I think Brian's right in the sense that their failures, because ultimately this is all heading toward. I mean, we think of Rogue One, but it's Rogue One and A New Hope, and the end of A New Hope's blowing up one of those Golden Globes you mentioned earlier, Paul. Blows up the Death Star. So ultimately they fail on multiple levels, militarily, intelligence-wise, bad luck, whatever you want to call it. So it all conspires to blow up the Death Star. So they probably do take a hit. I can't imagine many people in that room, still being around at the time of A New Hope. Let's put it that way.
The justification as well in this scene that they used for the way that dealt with Krieger was to effectively calm the Emperor, appease the Emperor in some degree over what happened in Aldhani. Clearly the Emperor deeply concerned that his staff's payroll was stolen, because he likes to look after his employees, and wouldn't want to see them undermined. You don't see many strikes happening under the Emperor's rule. Happy workers. And,
it's a good point.
And so that was kind of used or just. I kind of thought it was interesting because it was like almost like a self-admission that we're almost playing a game here. It wasn't so much this. Often the impression's given that they're almost under the Emperor's will or so committed to the cause. It was almost like, we're just doing this to get our job done. It's like a 9-to-5 job. We just want everybody to go home happy, and we're playing a little game of make-believe almost.
But there's a lot of box ticking, isn't there? You kind of get the impression Partagax is an administrator in the truest sense. He's got a list of things that need to be accomplished. He saw that in the early briefing room scenes when he was kind of chewing them out for not hitting certain targets, and we're at 33% for this, and you only needed 28, so well done. There was a lot of that about it. But also you mentioned the Emperor, and I think there's a little bit of, I mean, the Emperor. There's the whole arrogance of the Sith. That's a totally separate thing from what's happening here, but it plays into it, and it is kind of trying to keep the petulant toddler happy. And if they can throw him a bone to get the taste of Aldani out of his mouth, as Partagaz puts it, by taking Krieger off the table, they think that's the end of it. It's barely the beginning, but we know that they don't.
Yeah.
Are you both surprised that we didn't get the Emperor and Vader at some point in this series?
I'm glad we didn't.
I'm glad we didn't, but you're surprised that we didn't.
No, I think the mention of him, when the Emperor got mentioned and you never saw him, I thought that was more exciting by far than when you actually saw him in Kenobi.
Yeah. Oh, goodness, yeah, absolutely.
I kind of wanted to see the Emperor come out onto the platform in the Senate at some point.
Yeah.
Even if it was just to put Mon Mothma back in her place a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a grand speech of some kind to unite everyone behind him. We're gonna get to the point where he shuts down the Senate, and I wonder if he's going to be there himself for that.
Yeah,
that wouldn't it be? Well, we won't see that because that happens within A New Hope, but it'd certainly be close, wouldn't it? He's got to be wound up enough to be getting near to that being the final straw.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We're headed back to Ferrex. All the plants there, the Imperial plant is there, watching things, and it's to this point that they start realising that things are going slightly wrong because they've been watching Marva's house, and it's not the right person that comes out the door, and so the kind of alert goes out that something's not right here, and we learn that I've now forgotten his name.
Brasso.
Yeah, he's just he's met up with Andor, and start discussing Marva's funeral and what the plan should be, and Brasso basically tells Andor in many respects that he's going to be the one that's going to lead the funeral, and Andor kind of needs to stay away from it for his own good, really.
Yeah, that was a great scene. That apart from the fact that what Brasso tells Cassian what his mother had said, because obviously he's a friend of the family, and I love that sort of closeness of friendships. We've all had mates, and you know their mums and dads, and you go around for tea as a kid, and you get to know your friends' parents, and it had that vibe about it. I thought that was really cool, and the fact that they're as close as non-blood brothers are going to be. He's totally got Cassian's back, and the performance is just, it's shone. There's a real honesty about the way they played it, so I love that whole scene.
To be honest, I'm kind of surprised at the whole way that Ferrex kind of played out, and I probably shouldn't be, but I kind of felt that, they did the 3 episodes there, and it was kind of done, and they kind of went back very briefly. I never really expected them to go back again, but obviously they've gone back in a big style, and they've pulled through a lot of that characters, and a lot of that characters have then since really had quite episode sealing scenes, whether it's been Bix in the torture scene. Brasso in this episode I thought really stepped up and really showed his chops, and so it's been interesting the way that Ferrex has kind of played back around, but it's probably the last we have seen of it this time.
But don't you think you make a great point about performances there, Brian? Because I think across the board, throughout the whole season, you could probably pick out 5 or 6 standout, if not moments, and certainly actors' performances. Fiona Shaw was amazing, Andy Serkis was amazing. The actor, forgive me, I don't know his name, the actor that played Brasso was amazing. Cassian's been great. He was great in Rogue One. He's been great in this. Partagax has been great. Dedra's been great. Cyril Khan's been great. Everyone's been really. I've probably forgot people.
And it's gone beyond sort of the named main cast, if that makes sense as well. And the characters like Fel as well, who has had some great scenes, and it's kind of like unexpected. And I think Tony Gilroy said at the start that they had like 100 different speaking parts, I think.
190.
That many.
Yeah.
They really have found depth amongst the characters, and we'll get to it, I guess, in a moment. But the characters that survive and sort of go off planet, it's interesting. it's interesting. Are they going to be back for season 2 and what involvement they're going to have?
Absolutely. It feels, I just think everything is just felt like it's set up. It's setting up, it's queuing up for that season 2. I think they've been so clever about it.
Yeah. And Mark,
Yeah.
they're agreeing great casting for the characters.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
I can't think of any actor in it that I've thought didn't suit the role. I think everybody's been perfect in what they've done. I particularly liked what's the name of the actor that was in A Vida Zane Pet, that was in the prison stuff?
Oh, Fairbrass.
Yeah. Chris, is it Chris?
Chris Fairbrass.
Yeah.
Fairbank?
Yeah. Fairbank,
Moxie.
Moxie. I thought he played that part amazingly. And you could see that as a group of prisoners, how they were all close to him and they wanted to protect him. I thought that was quite sweet. But yeah, in this episode in 12, certainly Brasso, who previously we'd seen the character, but very much a background character. And like you said, Brian, you'd suddenly pull them to the fore, and you think, blimey, you could have centered loads around this guy. He's doing an outstanding job. And that relationship between him and Andor, when they met and they hugged, and they didn't say anything for quite a while. It was just literally, like you say, you got the closeness, the fact that they've probably grown up together, and everything about this series has been spot on because it's been allowed to breathe. It's pretty much, if you were to read the novel of Star Wars, totally different to watching the film. If you were to read the novel of Andor, it would be more or less exactly the series because it's been allowed to breathe that much.
Yeah.
Matt Booker there from Father Track Social Media. Collider reporting season 2 is filming now through August next year. I know it's filming now. I believe it finishes before August. Late spring, shall we say. But yeah, then the episode really picked up at this point because Cyril's there.
Yes.
And it's all about Cyril for me.
But Brian, I've got to ask you a question about this particular scene. And I love this scene because I don't know what's happening. What is it about the hat swapping?
Yeah. What
I
is
love that.
about?
It clearly meant something to them.
Because Cyril's got style, you know.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, and he likes to be smartly dressed, doesn't like the standard uniform, likes to get a little bit of line in the pockets, brush the suit down a little bit, get a little bit sparkly and shiny. And he looks cooler with that hat on.
Okay.
That's
The way that they
a lot of
not
Star
a
Wars
word
characters wear
spoken.
hats.
Tony Gilroy's apparently quoting August to Collider. What does Tony Gilroy know? I know better. I'm telling Tony Gilroy, get your finger out and get it finished by late May, like I was told. None of this August rubbish. Just because Bob Iger's back doesn't give you extra budget.
Well, think about it. Everyone in America is saying today's Thanksgiving. We know it's Thursday.
This is a shocking slander that Cyril gets. Dodgy and creepy. Much loved and caring, I would describe him. Emotional, charming. Anyway. Characters start meeting up. So Luthien meets with Vel, which was interesting because she's kind of been extremely keen to meet him, and they have very little in terms of much in the way of communication here. Just based off the last episode, she was urgently trying to reach him, and obviously she was wanting to alert him to Andor being there, and he's kind of turned up in the cell. We didn't really get the scene between her and Luthien that kind of connected the dots to bring him there. So I kind of found this scene a little bit odd. It didn't kind of fit. It felt like there was maybe a deleted scene somewhere in between.
Yeah, I think there's just a general sort of tension with all the characters. I mean, not only between the characters, but you could feel the simmering something of things are going to kick off. And we know that dramatically as Star Wars fans and the way it's all playing, but just through the characters. So everyone was a little bit, I think by design, I think everyone was a little bit off kilter. Obviously, Cassian's grief-stricken, so he's not quite on his normal game. And there's a lot of things, just not quite there with the characters. So, but as I say, I don't think that was by fault of anything. I think it was written that way.
Yeah, I
That's,
think they're just meeting up on a bad day, on an inappropriate day. So I think they have to be a bit hurried with their communication and a bit subtle about it, I suppose, because of
Yeah.
prying eyes.
Matt's
And
telling me.
Vel's not happy. She's just met up with Sintra, and Sintra didn't seem that interested, did she? And her nose was a little bit put out of joint. So there's a little bit of tension, personal tension there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Matt's telling me to get back on program, but all I can say to that is Tony Gilroy should know there's only one way out. And it's been very used in Lucasfilm in terms of directors of like just a warning. The bells start chiming, taking the Imperials by surprise, and this is kind of really where things step up. Imperials kind of thought they had hours to go before the funeral, and the people of Ferrix are playing a fast one almost to catch the Imperials out of action. The band starts playing, the crowd starts gathering, the funeral's kicking off. Cinta has integrated herself into the procession, and we get a nice view of the gloves in the wall, which matches, if you remember, on the prison, the Walla shoes. Very odd.
Yeah.
And we start getting the march, and they're coming from all angles, not just Rick's Road. So the Imperial plan has completely fallen apart at this point. And Andor, he's watching from a distance, and he spots Luthien, and I think Andor at this point realizes that things are maybe stacking up against him a little bit, and maybe he should take Brasso's thoughts and stay away a little bit. And you can see him there watching on, and it's kind of odd that Andor, as much as he's been the central character of the series, and in many of the episodes, he's not necessarily the critical character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think of that, Paul.
He's basically, well, he's the hook. He's the hook for the show because he's the character that we know moving forward. But I think we kind of guessed before it aired that it would be more of an ensemble cast than just Andor. If anything, I suppose you could say that Andor could actually refer to Marva. In many ways. After all, she is a true Andor, and he's adopted, isn't he? So, but yeah, he doesn't need to be there all the time. I mean, he was so overjoyed to be back on board with Star Wars when we saw him at Celebration. He was like a kid in a sweet shop. He really was. So he wouldn't have minded if he'd only featured in 2 episodes, but the fact that he's been the focal point, if not always there, he's loved it.
Yeah, Phil Parker's there saying that every time that I see Cinta, the captions are coming up as Santa. So that gives me a chance to throw this one out there. My little graphic ready for next month. I've also got one for Marva as well. Here's Marva. Oh dear.
It's like it writes itself.
Yeah.
Too soon.
Yeah, too soon. The Imperials start scrambling to try and retain some order. Cinta's kind of watching from a distance, and she spots not this guy. I spotted this guy. I had to throw his picture in. Anytime there's a chance to screen grab Cyril, I'm in there.
Get a room.
He's watching. Luthien's watching. They're all watching. And Brasso's there at the front with the brick. I love my brick. It just reminds me of Father Ted. I find it really odd. I guess it's a nice thing, but I just find it really odd that when we're watching the Football World Cup and they're going on about it being built on the bodies of immigrant workers, and in Star Wars they're literally building bricks with people's bodies. It's there's a very strange parallel there. There we go, Mr. Booker saying again, as I said, I love my brick. Bix is also watching from her sort of. Is she in prison? Is she being held hostage at this point? I kind of felt like it didn't feel like a prison. She's been held in what was the converted hotel. It's been now turned into the Imperial base. I feel like she's almost Stockholm syndrome there, where she.
Yeah, she's kind of broken.
Yeah.
Whatever was in those headphones didn't do her any good.
No. B2,
Here he is.
He's part of the procession. First time he's been able to walk down Rick's Road and not be peed on.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of a cool uniform. It's a kind of a cool look.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
Captain Scarlet. There he is.
And to show you the kind of scale of this production, I know Matt, who's watching the comments, he did a chance to sort of go to the site where they were filming this, and I want to say it's Little Harlow off the top of my head, or Little Marlow, I think it is.
Yeah.
Harlow said Uncle Harlow. I think it's Little Marlow, so kind of like a little village in rural England, and they built huge, effectively small town, and the sheer number of extras for a Star Wars TV production, that's something else. I think we've never seen anything like that before. I don't think.
No,
not to that level. They even painted them in on the Death Star, so that's impressive.
I wondered if the people who are in the band are the actual orchestra, because we did see the behind the scenes where they had the orchestra actually playing on set, and having seen that, I'm assuming it was for these scenes. And I'm wondering if any of them are actually of the actual orchestra, are actually the band players.
Possible, yeah.
Don't see why not.
Yeah.
We start going house to house. Our little Imperial spy there with Deidre. They're hunting down and looking for Andor. Every nook and cranny is being explored. And the crowd is starting to get a little bit tense and hostile. Andor himself, he's in the hotel. He's looking for Bix, and we get what is quite an emotional and lovely scene with a hologram of Marva, and she does a grand speech about life in Ferrex and what it meant to her, and ultimately calls out the Empire for being terrible, and encourages people to rise up against the Empire, and showing her true colours. Terrible woman.
Brilliantly done.
Yeah, Paul, what did you think of this scene? Did it hit all the right notes for you?
Absolutely, yeah. It felt majestic. It felt empowering. It felt like she was more present at her funeral than any of us are ever likely to be. And the speech itself was amazing. The fact that eventually one of the Imperial officers takes off his waterproof cape and tries to throw it over B2 Emo to block the projection of it made the last few bits of that speech even more focused, if you like, because you just got that sort of slither of her rather than the entire Marva. And if anything, it added to the fact that an uprising was about to happen. Brilliantly done, beautifully acted, and it was a standout moment for this episode, I think.
I think it's how I'd like my funeral to go at the end, just to kick off and there'd be a riot.
We'll see if we can get B2 Emo to come in.
Yeah, we're not having droids there.
It would only be appropriate that you had a droid at your funeral, Brian, anyway.
I'm going to have to outlive all of you guys just to make sure that doesn't happen.
Don't worry, we know a few R2 builders.
Mark, your take on this scene, it was kind of very much central to the whole episode.
Yeah, it was, and you realise that 11 and 12 was that two-parter, Daughter Ferrex and Rick's Road. We're building towards this this big moment. And I don't know how true the rumours were that in the original version, she, instead of saying fight the Empire, she said something else beginning with F. There's rumours that she dropped a big naughty word, and they decided to edit that out, which I'm really glad they did, because that would not be cool in my eyes, personally. But there you go. But nevertheless, the intent of what she was saying, if that's what she originally said, was totally still there. She's basically saying, screw the system, it's not working, we've been caught with our trousers down, basically. And she's just calling them to arms. And I just think it'll be interesting, just from a galactic history point of view, and it'll roll out as time moves on, because, you know, you kind of retcon by going back to make a prequel anyway. So this becomes the galactic history. We just didn't hear it, but it still happened. That Ferrix was one of the first places where, you know, people took a proper stand, and this is a proper stand. So yeah, it was a brilliant scene.
Yeah.
Cyril, he's listening, watching on. He's not impressed because he's a man of order. He knows how things should be. And he's there with his good mate. The reason they swapped the hats was probably because they recorded this scene first and realised that they had their hats round the wrong way.
That's probably true. That is probably true.
It could be something as stupid as that.
Yeah. Andor has made his way to Bix and suddenly realises what a state that she's in, and they begin their escape. Things outside start kicking off. The Imperial Riot Police are there. Cyril watching on, deeply concerned. And he goes running forward to get involved because he respects the law. And this then happened. It cut to this, and I thought, my God, they've killed Cyril. And I use a bad word. But thankfully they didn't. This was the bomb that we saw at the start thrown to blow up the Imperial's, I guess, speeder tank type thing. Luthian, kind of shocked. Don't think he was expecting things to escalate in this manner, and he kind of makes a hasty retreat, realising the situation and how it's going to go. He doesn't want to be there. And Vel, on the other hand, runs towards the trouble in the most stunning way. I've become upset. I've watched the episode a few times now, and I've just become obsessed with the way that she runs. It's very bizarre, and I don't know what it is about it. It's almost like a comedy run. I don't know what it is.
She runs like Rey in The Rise of Skywalker, who in turn runs like a little old lady.
Like she's got a bat on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to watch that again.
Yeah. And another great scene. He's trying to kill the stormtrooper.
No, he's cuddling him. He's giving him a cuddle.
And Cinta has stepped out of the main trouble, and she's actually going after the Imperial spy that she's kind of identified. And looks like she's going for a kiss, but in fact she has stabbed him and killed him. So protecting herself in many ways, because they were the two underground spies on opposing sides.
Yeah, true.
Andor's there, still alive. Him and Bix sort of thrown by the explosion a little bit. Deidre's in the middle of it. Gets hit in the head by a brick. And I'm just like, whose body is that? I'm just like, of all the things for the people of Ferrix to be throwing, it's like bricks. That's like their thing, and I'm just like, it's like, is that Marva that's just hit her on the side of the head? James actually made a good point. I don't know if I've got a screenshot of it, but Brasso headbutts a stormtrooper, I think, at one point, which was just weird. I didn't like that bit, but anyway. Start beating up the crowd a little bit, trying to get order. That's what we want to see from our police enforcement officers. The whole chaos allows Andor and Bix to effectively walk away relatively unseen and unscathed.
Yeah.
Deidre, meanwhile, is in quite a lot of trouble. She's kind of scrambling on the ground. And someone points a gun at her and drags her away into a building. And it turns out to be none other than our hero. The man who the show should be titled after. It should be called Cyril. Everybody would watch a TV show called Cyril, I think. And I don't know if she's shocked or appalled, scared. How would you describe it, Paul?
Well, I think what she's thinking is, blimey, I thought Cyril was who I wrote to for cosmic correspondence, and I thought he was a robot. So she's clearly confused that there's another Cyril in the Star Wars galaxy. No, she's thinking, shall I kiss him? Is he going to kiss me? Oh, this is awkward. And has he got the right hat on? That's what she's thinking. Has he got the right hat on?
It was going to go one of two ways. There was going to be another knifing to parallel Cinta, or he was going to get a kiss and he got neither.
Nah.
What a cliffhanger!
But we presume they both get to live.
Yeah, Mark, what do you think should have happened?
Well, I think because
kiss, cuddle, or torture, basically.
Well, if she'd have knifed him, he'd have got Blade, and if she'd have kissed him, he might have got the other. So it could have gone either way, couldn't it? I don't know. I think she's part terrified, so she's not thinking straight. She's probably quite pleased to see him because the situation she was in. But she's ISB. I mean, they're sort of number crunchers sitting around the table. She's not a soldier, so she's probably not had much training beyond, you would imagine, fairly basic training, unless they flesh out the backstory. But that's, seeing it for real as it kicks off. Even Luthen's surprised, as you mentioned, Brian.
Yeah.
So for her to see it happen in real time would be probably for her quite shocking. So I'd say that was genuine terror, and we'll see how it all pans out in season 2. But I think that could set some quite interesting things up there.
As James,
I'm guessing he's going to come back with a significant. He'll have a promotion, won't he? He'll definitely have a promotion by season 2.
Yeah. She thinks she owes him, but doesn't want to pay him. Also realises how close she came to dying.
Yeah.
We're going to be a year further forward for season 2 at the start.
Yeah.
Are we going to start with Baby Cyril?
Yeah, definitely.
We could. I'm not entirely convinced we're going to be moving that far forward, because I think this season's taken up a good chunk of the year anyway. I don't think we're going to be way ahead. I think the next few episodes.
I think Tony Gilroy said that they were going to start a year further on, that a lot has happened within that year.
Oh, I'm quite happy for that, especially if they do drop us some comics and books in between to give us some, info on what's gone on. Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting. This is where Cyril's story ends, sadly.
Oh, no.
But there's still some more to the episode, so we should keep watching, even though the best bit's passed. Do we know how long he was in prison? 60 days?
45 days, apparently. So Mr. Mulcaster reckons.
How many say that again, Mark?
About 45 days, Mark reckons.
Yeah, okay.
So
I had 60 in my head, so we'll go with 45. Well, trust Mark, he's much more accurate at these things than I am.
Oh, yeah.
More observant. As we say, Luthien has kind of backed away. He's kind of surveying the scene from a distance. He's not getting involved. And
Coward.
I know. Our heroes, I guess we should call them. Andor's kind of gathered everybody he kind of loves, got them to a ship with Brasso. So we've got the young kid there who's, wish I'd bothered to check his name, but I didn't. B2 Emo, Brasso, Bix are all there, all aboard a ship ready to escape Ferrex. So I think it's safe to say we're going to see all of these characters in season 2.
Feels like it.
Andor, kind of a little bit sad, it seems to be leaving them behind again. And we'll learn why perhaps in a moment. And this is when we flick back to Coruscant. And due to Mon Mothma's funding of terrorism, parents' gambling habits, they're pretty much now selling their daughter. um, and this is the lovely family that they're going to be catching up with. And we don't know the wife's name, but with that kind of hair, we're pretty assuming that was an arranged marriage.
It's either Elvira or Marge.
I think this is going to be a quite significant plot line for season 2.
Yeah.
Mon Mothma's in a bit of a tricky position. She's basically aligning herself with a sleazy underworld guy who's going to eke revenge on her at some point somehow, so she can continue to fund her rebellion. Steve, looks like it's the Jetsons. I don't know. I just didn't like the look of this. I kind of dug the guy with the sort of it's almost like the neck of a dinner jacket underneath. Kind of worked for me, but the rest of the family, it didn't look Star Wars to me. Kind of looked a little bit weird, but we'll let it pass.
It's a bit very prequely.
Cyril's pal has turned to alcohol because he's all alone. I kept that frame in just because I found it amusing. And then we got to the climax of the episode, and Luthien has returned to his ship, and Andor's there, and we get quite an interesting little conversation with him where Andor basically says to him to either kill me or basically let me join your rebellion in some degrees. And I wondered what you guys thought. Was that the right way to end season 2 for Andor? Is for him to be had his storyline progressed enough for him to be at the point to make that decision?
I think so. Yeah. If anything, I'd like to have seen a little bit more, maybe arriving on Yavin or somewhere like that. But I thought it was almost like an ending, but also a teaser for season 2 as well. So yeah, it did what it needed to do.
Yeah, I kind of felt a little bit that Andor was like the extra wheel in this episode that wasn't necessarily needed in many regards.
Yeah, but he is. Go on, Mark.
Go on, sorry, go on.
No, I mean, he's like the he's the plot device, isn't he? You know, he's there just to drive everything else along, and we've got that emotional link to him because we know what's coming in Rogue One. Whereas you could argue really that the series has been more about your mate Cyril, right? You know, the true hero. But no, I think he was in it enough for it still to be quite happily labelled as Andor. Yeah.
For me, I kind of felt like Andor's storyline up when he escaped the prison and he kind of met the 2 aliens and they got the ship. It should have been at that point that he met Luthien and he had that conversation with Luthien where he was almost broken and at a desperation point. I didn't feel like it worked for him, the whole funeral element. I didn't feel it got the emotion into that character somehow, and I felt he felt more broken and maybe more desperate at the end of the previous episode than he maybe did in this.
It was a bit of a compromise though, wasn't it? Because he wanted to be there, but at the same time he couldn't be too present because otherwise he'd have been killed. So he was kind of sort of lurking in the shadows, and he's probably felt a bit sort of at a low ebb that he's not been able to actually be at his own mother's funeral. So I think he kind of he's underplayed the part quite well in that sense, Diego. You know, it's not been a sort of like wailing and howling about it all. It's been very subtly sort of at a bit of a low ebb. So no, I think he hit it spot on.
Do you agree, Mark?
Yeah, I think he was. I mean, he had to be there. I guess for his own conscience, he felt like he had to be there, and I think everybody knew it. It was just whether or not they found him, and the right people did. You know, Brasso and so on. But yeah, he was very much the observer in this episode. He wasn't instigating much other than getting Bix out, which, like you sort of said earlier, felt quite easy because she was broken and they probably didn't have to, have a guard sitting on the door or anything like that. So, it's a tough one. I think at the end, his friends have left. He can't stay on Ferrix. He's lost his mother. He's lost his purpose because he thinks Luthen wants him dead. So it's a gambit, isn't it? He's just chancing on Luthen seeing the value in him, I think. And thankfully he does because, he brought him in after all. He did give him his, Kyber crystal necklace back. And, it's just the way he left the Aldani heist at the end was probably what made them nervous. But, he's there, isn't he? He's turned up back on the ship and kind of handed himself in to a large degree. So I think he's thrown himself on Luthen's mercy, but I think it's probably a calculated gamble, which pays off.
Yeah. And the episode continued into a post-credit scene where we got these little spider droids running about, and it quickly appears that they're carrying the little bits of equipment that they were building on Nirvana 5 in the prison. And as we pan out, we learn that they're putting together the array for the security space station to help maintain peace around the galaxy. Because obviously there's been a rise in terrorism, and a responsible government needs to protect its citizens, and that's kind of where we've gotten to in the galaxy. And so Andor has been creating his own destruction in many ways, because the Death Star is going to be the end to him. He's the one that helped build it, which is there's an element of irony there, I think, to end the episode.
Definitely.
He was building a super laser. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, I pointed that out to a few mates the other day. Oh dear. Yeah, it was a nice little sort of epilogue, wasn't it? It was a good little send off that. Although, don't we see that mechanism being actually put onto the Death Star in Rogue One? We see the actual dish being slotted in. Yeah. So it must take them a hell of a long time to put all that stuff together.
Well, they need to get some more prisoners to finish building the parts. Yeah, the timeline doesn't quite fit, does it?
Either that, they might have had strikes. Who knows?
Well, I mean, in Revenge of the Sith, obviously you see the cage of it coming together, and to fill it all out and build it would take significant time and labour, and we now know how they get their labour points together. But I think the whole point of Rogue One and the Jeddah thing and getting the Kyber crystal and that being the focusing crystal for the laser and blah 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 was that the biggest problem they had was building that super laser. So that is the heart of it.
Don't forget, you can drive up the M5 and you can drive backwards and forwards up it 6 months, and those cones are there. You never see anybody working on it. So I'm guessing that's pretty much how they're building the Death Star. Coned off for ages, very little work going on.
That's very true. I actually predicted it in the last review show that I thought that's what they were going to be building parts for. Amazing.
Yeah.
I got one thing right out the whole season. But I never expected it to be as complete Death Star. I expected it to look a little bit like the Andor Death Star and really just a shell. And I thought that could have been more practical.
Well, they were basically building effectively the wooden dowels that join things together. They're just joints, aren't they? It just seems to be things.
Pretty much.
Mark Howard does make a good point here amongst the criticism of the timeline that they had to get Galen back because of problems with the weapon, which is very true. So it was that complete for quite some time.
And that's before this. That's quite a few years before this. This is 4.5 years before Star Wars. That was Jin was a kid. That was like 10 plus years before. So the work had stalled. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Predictions for season 2 then, Paul. Where would you like to see the story go? We know we're going to get effectively
Well,
4 storylines 1 year apart, and we know we're going to
that's
start
right.
off a
But
year further down the line.
yeah, so we're going to be leading right up to Rogue One with it, aren't we? And like you said, there's going to be 3 episodes dedicated to a year on each occasion. I'd like to see. Well, would I? I think purely just to gel it all together, we're going to see some familiar characters brought into it. I think we will see characters from Rebels. We're likely to see the Emperor, Vader. I'd like to see who was it you just mentioned? From Rogue One, the guy that
Galen.
installed Galen. Couldn't think of his name.
Galen
I'd like to
Erso,
see, yeah,
yeah.
I think
Krennic.
Galen Erso in some point would be good, and even to see Grand Moff Tarkin, even if we only see him for like 30 seconds in an episode, just to pull it all together. That's what Star Wars is always very good at. Is it's sort of like interconnecting everything, and as long as it's done, from a good place rather than just let's just stick this character in there. As long as there's a reason for them to be there, then it's all good. But yeah, I want to see that the base on Yavin 4 under some sort of development. Maybe a bit more, a little bit more from who's the guy that he's in A New Hope as well at the end. He gets the plans for the Death Star from Princess Leia. Yeah, get the Donna in there because obviously the actor that played him in Rogue One is still kicking around. He's been in Derry Girls and stuff, so we could flesh that character out a bit more. There's just plenty of characters that we could go at in that you wouldn't expect to expand upon, rather than going for the obvious ones, which I think would be quite nice.
Mark?
Yeah, I think seeing the mechanics of the alliance start to come together will be interesting because Mothma's still, she's still in the Senate putting a face on it. So I think her Bail Organa feels like he's got to come into it to a degree as well, doing a similar thing. But just as the alliance builds and starts to come together, these factions, okay, Anto Krieger's people are gone, but you've still got the Phoenix Squadron, you've still got Saw Gerrera's partisans. There's other elements that have got to come together. So to see, to go from where we are now, when they've got nothing, to build up to having a rebel fleet essentially that was ready to attack Scarif like they did, and then have the guts to do it, Yavin and on. And clearly between Star Wars and Empire, they build up an actual fleet. You see it at the end of Empire. So, we're not that far away from there yet. We're only 6 or 7 years. So I'd like to see the start of that sort of mechanization of the alliance build up. So I think that would be interesting. And for Cassian as a character, you open Rogue One with him sort of finishing a mission, which obviously doesn't go well because Tivik bites the dust. But nevertheless, I'd like to see Tivik come into it. I'd like to see Cassian going out on those kind of missions because he is like a James Bond kind of character, the blunt instrument type character you could send out and do stuff. So I think there's a lot of play, but there's definitely going to be more Coruscant. There's definitely, obviously, with the characters we've got now and new cast of characters, more from all of them. So I can't wait.
It'd be nice to see some Akbar and Radis as well. That'd be good.
Yeah, that would be brilliant, actually. Yeah, both of them, yeah.
Phil Parker, hopefully season 2 will feature more Saw. I think we can all agree we kind of want that. James is saying the dissolution of the Senate and Mon Mothma running from Coruscant. I kind of want this too, and I know it doesn't fit quite right with the timeline, but you can kind of fudge that on the bit that the actual dissolution of the Senate and the reporting of it could be at 2 different times. Mark Howard saying, do we think season 2 will be a long chase after the Death Star? I don't think it'll be mentioned again. I think I think it was just an Easter egg for fans, and I don't think it's going to be central to the plot. Although someone that hasn't been mentioned as being in it, I would like to see Krennic.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to see him come in and maybe disrupt the ISB a little bit. I think the ISB is going to have some kind of rupture to it. I would like to see Cyril be an ISB agent. I think he would get a nice, crisp, white-looking suit.
Yeah.
Um, that would be an interesting turn of events. I'm not sure what I want from Andor. I know I want to see the creation of the rebellion, um, and how that plays out. I want to see the ruptures in the Senate. I would like to see the Emperor, even if it's a 30-second cameo. Don't want to see Vader. Don't think that's needed.
No.
Yeah, it's difficult. But yeah, I kind of feel it needs a very heavy rebellion element, and maybe get some storylines to some of the guys that take the stage during the medal giving ceremony at the end, and flesh those characters out. How did they get their situation? How does Alderaan become involved?
Yeah.
Well, we could also see Edgar's Nest as well, because it was hinted at the end of Solo that was where she was likely to be off to next, wasn't it?
Yeah. Deidre hasn't failed in her mission. Her mission all along was to fall in love with Cyril. It has happened. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think she's not happy with ISB either.
Nah.
It's because there's something going to break there. I think.
I think there's a good chance of Cyril. I know he's your man, but Cyril, if Cyril ended up in the control room on the Masasi base at the end of A New Hope, and he was one of those guys in the control, that wouldn't surprise me one bit, because I don't think he was overly impressed with what happened on Ferrix. I don't think
he's
many
a
of them
man
were.
that believes in law and order. I don't think he necessarily. I think he would be quite a just person, for all his faults. I think he if he gets told this is a law, then he's going to follow it. I don't think he necessarily questions the law. I don't think he would like to see people abusing the law either. But no,
We'll find out in 2 years' time.
we will.
I think they missed
I
a trick.
predicted earlier in the season that I actually thought Cyril was going to end up on the rebellion side, and I can still see that in some degree.
I think his mate will, the one that was sitting on the steps swigging away.
Oh, from EastEnders, yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. A bunch of drunks, terrorist drunks, the rebels. They don't respect law and order and democracy. Terrible.
Yes,
the big
who's Uncle
question
Harlow?
coming from Matt there for Fanta Tracks there. Who is Uncle Harlow? Thoughts? Any ideas?
I hope Uncle Harlow is nobody. I hope he is literally just a family friend or something irrelevant. Like I kind of weirdly hope Cassian's sister didn't make it off the home planet and she isn't alive like Marva said, don't go looking for your sister because you won't find her. So I just think some things, it doesn't need to be a Scooby-Doo mystery. It could be a family tragedy that he was just never told about. But Uncle Harlow, I think Uncle Harlow's probably some nobody. It'll probably end up turning out to be Harlow Partagax and he's the head of the ISB or something. Something crazy like that.
I kind of thought that Uncle Harlow was going to end up being Luthien.
That wouldn't surprise me.
But if you remember, Luthien was standing on the steps next to Cyril and they didn't really have any reaction to each other. Well, there potentially wasn't a direct eyesight between the two, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like it's going to end up being like someone like Saw Gerrera.
Yeah.
Well, he was uncle to Jin, wasn't he? So, stranger things have happened.
It's going to be someone we don't think of, I think. Are we going to find out about Andor's sister? Is that going to come back in it? Because it really was the central plot of the first episode. It's why he was it's why he was hanging about brothels. If we remember.
One of the reasons. Yeah. Possibly. I hope so. I hope we get some resolution to it, but I don't think. I'd be kind of disappointed if it turned out, that we've met his sister and we just don't know it yet.
I still think it's Cinta.
Possibly. As long as it's not Bix.
We're going to get a Luke Leia situation again. Yeah. It's interesting. There's lots of options. And interestingly, I think that the least thing that people are necessarily interested in is Andor's storyline, weirdly.
But don't you think what they could do if they're really clever about it? If season 2 gets a good response to it, they could bring in his sister towards the end of it, and then season 3 of Andor could centre around her rather than Cassian Andor could be the sister.
Well, it's like The Mandalorian, isn't it? You call the show The Mandalorian. It doesn't have to be Din Djarin. It can be other Mandalorians. And this is the same. You made a great point earlier. We never really picked up on it. That Cassian is adopted. You know, he was called Cassa, but whatever his surname.
Abducted.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Abducted, yeah, exactly, yeah. You know, but Marva is the Andor and Clem are the Andors and so, yeah, there's potential. Yeah. Definitely potential.
In that case, though, then she won't be identifying as an Andor anyway, will she?
No.
So that's blown that one out of the water for me. Perhaps it'll be about Marva's ghost.
Marva's ghost, that'd be a good one.
You said that and I wasn't teed up. Say it.
Sorry.
Wait. Hold off. Say it again.
Perhaps it'll be about Marva's ghost.
I'll edit that. I'll edit the gap. Dear. Yeah, that is season 1 wrapped, and I think we should wrap up as well on that stunning finale there.
Visual effects, yeah.
I think we'll be back for season 2 in 2 years' time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
We'll maybe do something before then. I'm going to be back on Sunday with catch up on the news. There'll be more Star Wars content coming. The Mandalorian in February, I think, will be our next TV reviews.
Yeah.
Although that people watching Lucasfilm content should be reminded that Willow starts next week. Mark, you've had a chance to see the first couple of episodes at the UK premiere.
Yes.
Can't say too much about the plot, but thumbs up, thumbs down?
Oh, definitely thumbs up. Nice and breezy, bright and fun, really nice visuals, and the cast has got loads of chemistry. So I think people will really dig the banter and the chemistry between the characters. It was really nicely done.
Excellent.
Good.
Paul, what do you think of Willow, having not seen it?
Well, I like the original film.
Yeah, there we go. That's what we got.
You'll love the series then.
Yeah, so watch out for reviews on Willow, I'm sure, coming to fantatracks.com in the meantime. Other than that, we'll be back with more Star Wars TV reviews in the new year, so we'll see you all then. And don't forget Good Morning Tatooine every Sunday evening, 9 o'clock in the UK, and whatever time that is around the galaxy. Matt's asking, just a last question. Good Morning Tatooine roundup for Bad Batch episodes?
Well,
you love your cartoons, Brian.
I'm more than happy to organise that if you guys want to do it, but I don't think I'll be commentating on Star Wars animation.
That's a solid maybe then.
Yeah, that's a maybe. Well, solid maybe. On that note, let's call it a night, guys. Thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for your comments and everyone's comments throughout the whole series as well. It's been fun watching Andor alongside you all, and look forward to rejoining again in a couple of years' time to find out what the final story is going to be. So on that note, good night.
Bye.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on fantatracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Fantatracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Fantatracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.